Hi, I wanted to make this video because I've been thinking. And this time I've been thinking about cash. And the reason I've been thinking about cash is because I've noticed that physical money seems to be gradually becoming a thing of the past. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I think I've accidentally just tagged along with the movement towards everything being digital without really thinking about it. And when I tried to use cash recently, I was told that cash was no longer accepted. And I felt quite shocked because I didn't like having my choice taken away. I was able to pay by card, but it definitely got me thinking about whether losing the option to pay by cash might be something that I ought to be more worried about. And I definitely like the convenience of online banking and digital spending, but having the option of spending real cash taken away felt like something that I wasn't ready for. And I think up until that point, I'd always felt that the option of paying by card was there to make it easier and more convenient for me. But now if we're starting to see the option of paying by cash taken away, it's starting to feel less about giving me a choice and more about controlling how I pay for things, whether I like it or not. So maybe that sounds a bit dramatic, but if I don't have the choice to pay by cash, then I do feel a bit like I'm being pushed in a certain direction and having some of my freedom of choice taken away. And maybe we really are heading towards a situation where cash won't be accepted anywhere. And if we are, is that okay? Or should we be doing something now to protect cash and to make sure that we don't accidentally find ourselves in a completely cashless world and then can't go back? So I thought it would be an interesting subject to think about, and maybe that will help me to decide if there's anything that I want to change about my approach towards cash while I still can. And maybe it will do the same for you. So I guess I'm probably about the right age to have seen some of the biggest differences in our approach to cash over the last 10 or 20 years. And I can see that the next generation are growing up with a very different attitude towards cash. And I guess it's their attitude that's likely to shape the future of cash. So I guess we ought to pay attention to that. So I think they definitely still like money, but they seem to have no interest in cash and actually seem to view it as nothing but an inconvenience. And maybe they're right. I noticed the shift a few years ago with my own children that if they received cash, they would ask me to buy it off them so that they could actually spend it without having to go to the bank first. They don't use cash for anything, so if they get cash, all they want to do is turn it into a form that they can actually spend, which to them is an online gift card or money in the bank. And speaking of getting your cash into the bank, I actually found out recently that I can now pay notes and coins into my bank account using the mobile banking app on my phone. So when I heard that, I thought it must be a mistake because I couldn't see anywhere on my phone to feed in the notes and the coins, but apparently it's true. Sadly, I think it's probably because a lot of the smaller towns don't have a bank anymore. So the banks have linked up with various shops to be able to offer a paying in service. The cat. And so the banking app creates a barcode for the shop to scan, and the shop takes your notes and coins, not your phone, and then the money appears in your bank account. So it's good, but it's not as magic as I first thought. And it probably has come about as a result of people using less cash. So anyway, back to my stories about cash. So the first job I had was paid entirely in cash, once a week in a brown envelope. And getting that envelope was really exciting. I loved opening it and counting what was inside, making sure it was right and hoping that maybe there'd be a little bit more than I was expecting. And I never knew what sort of notes I'd be getting, and sometimes there'd be lots of smaller notes and occasionally a £50 note, which was somehow more exciting, even though it added up to the same amount overall. It could actually be quite difficult to spend a £50 note because a lot of places were cautious about taking them. So I don't know if that's still the case because I haven't seen one for years. But I can remember that sometimes you'd have to wait in a shop while the manager was called and they'd come and have a look at you to see whether you looked a bit dodgy. And they'd probably scribble on the note with a highlighter pen and then tell you whether or not they were willing to accept it. It was always a bit of a tense moment, but it was fun getting lots of change back if you'd only spent £1 or £2 out of your 50. But anyway, the point really was that everything was cash. I was paid in cash, I spent in cash, and when I ran out of cash, I ran out of options. It really was as simple as that. If what I was buying came to more than I had in cash, then I had to put something back. And if I lost the cash that I'd taken out with me, then I wouldn't be able to buy anything unless someone else could help me out. I did used to try and keep an emergency £10 that I tried my best to forget about, but I was always running out of money, so that concept never really worked very well. But I never really thought of cash as being inconvenient because there weren't any other options. So it was just the way that money worked. The biggest problem was that I didn't have enough. I'm sure everyone must like money, but isn't cash a bit more exciting in a way that digital money just isn't? I do think there was always something special about having cash in your pocket and then that feeling of finding a bit extra that you didn't know you had, like that emergency £10 if I really did manage to forget that I'd hidden it. So when I got my first proper job in an office, I had to set up a bank account. And I actually had to go and do that on my first day of work. I went in my lunch break and opened an account, and then I gave the details to my employer in the afternoon so that they could set up my pay. And then on payday, everyone was handed a paper payslip so that we knew how much we had. And then we all rushed off to the bank or to the cash point to get our hands on the money. So I was paid into a bank account, but I still had to pay for everything in cash or by cheque. I'd kind of forgotten about cheques, but those were what we had before we could pay by card. And I can still remember being held up waiting to pay for something while the person in front wrote out their cheque, asking who to make it out to and for how much, and then having to write out the amount in words and then finally add in a signature. And if you made it through all of that without making a mistake, then the cashier would write a load of details on the back of the cheque before finally accepting it as payment for whatever was being bought. I don't think I miss dealing with cheques. But then gradually we moved towards paying by card, which seemed a bit scary to start with because it was so easy to spend all of your money without feeling any of the pain of handing over your precious cash. And you even sometimes got asked if you wanted cash back, and that was a weird feeling when you'd come away with all your shopping plus a bit of extra cash in your pocket. I think as long as you didn't pay too much attention to your bank balance, it felt great. So it's actually been a long time since I've been asked if I want any cash back, and I wonder if that's because there's no desire for it anymore, or whether it's actually not available anymore. I don't actually know the answer to that. So when I think about my cash spending and what it looks like now, it's really the complete opposite of what it used to be. And that almost everything I buy is either online or paid by card. And I only tend to use cash if I have to. And I thought I was doing that by choice, but now I'm wondering if my choice has gradually been taken away without me noticing. But then maybe if I haven't noticed, it doesn't matter. I think I might have to try spending cash for a while to actually find out how many places no longer accept it. I do still tend to always have some cash on me, but I realise that isn't the case for everyone. And my children certainly don't bother to carry any cash because they just don't see the point. All they have is their phones, and that provides everything that they need. I do actually know one or two places local to me that still only accept cash. So I wonder how difficult that's getting for them, with people often having no cash on them at all. I've certainly been there when people have been turned away because they don't have any cash. And I actually sold someone some of my cash at that shop because the person trying to buy something asked me if I would accept a bank transfer from them so that they could buy some cash off me. I mean, it worked out fine, but I couldn't help wondering if I maybe shouldn't have done that with a complete stranger. So that's the kind of problem that you get when places only accept cash. But then there's the opposite problem with places that only accept card payments. And I know that some people don't want to use card payments or don't want to use internet banking. So where does that leave them? Does it force them to change where they shop, or does it force them to use card payments when they don't want to? And I wonder if there are still people who can't pay by card. So to me, the option of refusing cash payments feels worse than not accepting card payments. But maybe that's because it's the complete opposite of what I grew up with, and not because it's actually worse. Maybe limiting either of the options is just as bad as the other, because it takes away a choice from us, and it's a choice that we're used to having, so we might not be prepared to use a different option. And I actually took a flight recently, and if you wanted to buy anything on board the flight, it had to be a card payment, and it had to be in the currency of the airline. And I heard the cabin crew get one query after another because people wanted more options for how to pay for their items. So I thought that was quite strange, given that it's supposed to be a customer service industry, and they didn't seem to be giving their customers the choices that they wanted. So who's right in that situation? I'm sure it's easier for the airline to limit the payment options, but it can't be a nice experience to find yourself unable to pay for the food and drink that you were planning to have. And if you've got cash in your pocket, is it right that it isn't any use to you in that situation? I can think of pros and cons for cash and for digital payments, but I'm not sure that I can think of many pros for having one of my options taken away entirely. So my thoughts about cash are that it can be fun, from counting it to looking at the pictures on the notes and the coins, and maybe even collecting them to see if I can find rare ones or complete sets. But on the negative side, it's well known to be dirty and unhygienic. It's easy to lose or to get the wrong change and not notice. And it can support crime by being harder to track. And my thoughts about digital money are that it's very convenient, it's cleaner and easier to carry around, it's easier to track, and it can be used in other countries more easily. But on the negative side, it's easy to be charged twice and not notice. It's easy to spend more than you meant to, and sometimes it comes with extra charges that you weren't expecting. So maybe whichever way we go, there'll always be some risks, and we just have to accept the risks and try to be careful. But if we end up completely cashless, is that a different risk? I suppose in some ways it is, but I think we're probably already exposed to most of that risk and without really giving it much thought. So does it really matter if that's where we end up? I think things that are traditionally paid in cash, like tips or donations or whip rounds, already seem to have moved towards having a digital payment option. So maybe all the various consequences have already been thought about, and maybe I just overreacted when I couldn't pay with cash recently. Maybe I just need time to adjust. So, now that I've spent a bit of time thinking about this, do I want to do anything differently? Well, to be honest, I'm still not sure, so I'll be interested to hear what other people think. I still don't like the idea of losing cash altogether, but I also like the convenience of not having to worry about carrying cash around with me. So when I started this video, I thought that I would come to the conclusion that I'd want to go back to spending more cash to help make sure that it had a future. But I'm not sure that I've come up with any strong enough arguments to balance out the inconvenience that can come with using cash. So what do you think? Are you hoping that there's a future for cash, or are you not really bothered? Should we be fighting harder to keep cash, or is it time to just accept that cash is a thing of the past? So I'd be interested to know what you think if you want to leave a comment. So I hope you've taken something useful from this video, but I think that's all for this time. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!